and welcome to this exciting new episode for the Nightmares to Miracles podcast. Today, we are starting off the new theme for 2026, which is peace. And we've been doing a theme this year up until just October. And now for November and December, we're going to start with next year's theme. And we're excited to get started with that. So for those of you that are new, I'll introduce myself. My name is Brittany New, and I'm living in the Netherlands. And I'm here with Dr. Dave Asomaning, who is an executive coach who specializes in miracle mindsets and helping leaders cultivate miracle mindsets. So Dave, why don't you introduce yourself further and tell us a little bit more about what you do?
Thank you, Brittany. Good to see you again for our November uh, session and for the launch into the new theme for the new year. As you mentioned or indicated, we always start 2 months before the actual calendar year gets going. And I think it's a perfect time for us to be planning what we would like to be really focused on in 2026, which includes this miracle mindset work. So, yes, as you mentioned, I do executive coaching uh, by way of having originally thought of entering the Episcopal priesthood and also becoming a psychotherapist and a scholar in those paths. And then I dropped the scholarly piece and I dropped the psychotherapy piece in favor of my business Synchromind, and working with leaders became the main focus through a whole long series of winding circumstances. But I'm glad now that I'm just really fully rooted in working with people who are trying to build things, mostly companies and enterprises, and worked with some amazingly influential people with significant influence measured by the dollar amounts they control in budgets. And yeah, so one of the things that we talk about increasingly is the ultra high net worth or the wealthy nature of a lot of the clients I find myself working with, specifically around issues of wealth. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not a banker in terms of people's wealth. I don't do any of that. But we talk about the mindset issues that are related to being very, very wealthy, and the parenting issues that go with that, the legacy issues, what you leave, and so on. And so, yeah, in the main, I'm helping people build their organizations through the mindset aspects, especially if they're interested in miracle mindset, which is the whole focus of everything we've been doing for about to enter our 6th year now, I think, of this podcast. And we had worked a few years before that too. So the miracle mindset piece is very important, and then that comes into play with the money that the wealthy are controlling, with their relationships, with their health, with their sense of purpose. These are the big buckets that we work in. So, um, thanks, Brittany, for the intro, and back to you.
All right. Well, thanks for introducing yourself and giving a little bit of your background. I always like hearing about that because I always learn some. I feel like I always learn something new about you each time you do that. Last time it was the cocoa farms or the. I'm sorry.
Right,
The.
right, yes. And I have another anecdote for today, actually. I haven't shared
Yeah.
it yet, but
Okay.
I didn't want to go on and on. I wanted it to be more interactive. So I'll put that in just a moment. Yeah, but you're absolutely right. It was about the cocoa industry that my dad was involved in, starting as a young executive working for the Cocoa Research Institute of Ghana, which was generating, it was like oil to Ghana. They've discovered actual oil now, and on top of that, gold, and those things really add to the purse strings of the country, so to speak, but the GDP, gross domestic product. But at the time, in the early 60s through the 70s, cocoa was like the money maker for the country in terms of the foreign exchange. And so I've seen its numbers rise over the years, but I grew up with my dad being heavily involved in that industry. So totally correct. The cocoa
Yeah.
industry, yes, very good.
Yeah, I find it fascinating. And you mentioned even just before that that you like working with people who are building things, and that comes from your upbringing, having your dad in this industry and being a leader and a trailblazer over there. So thanks for sharing that. And today or like every episode of this podcast, we do a lesson from A Course in Miracles, and then Dave breaks it down with his magic sauce and tells us not only, how to interpret what it says, but also sometimes what it doesn't say. So today is going to be one of those lessons, and it's about peace. So let's see, we're going to get to that a little bit later, and I think we have some more preliminaries that you wanted to get into. Did you want to?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. So the anecdote I have before we go to the miracles around you, Brittany, which is a module that we do in our calls here. I love doing this module repetitively. It's just great fun. So just before we get to that, the leadership development and executive coaching theme I have for today, to keep it engaging and to keep it alive from my past and all of that is a quick anecdote about a company in New York City I worked with, where I was working very closely with the CEO, and then pretty quickly we agreed to start doing functional differentiation in his company. So we decided that rather than him doing mostly the different functions, the finance, the marketing, the human resources, and all of that, sort of he had people helping him, but it wasn't as differentiated with regular meetings of the whole team talking and all of that. And so he allowed me to ramp that up a little bit more. And then I ended up not just doing coaching work with him, but doing coaching work with all the different heads of the different areas. And then in particular with a marketing person. And our regular process around miracle mindset was basically repeating the question in the coaching: if you had a miracle in your marketing role, what would that miracle be? Now I'm compressing a lot of different things, but her her um, her repeated miracle over months was anticipated miracle was that I would go to a professional conference in my discipline, marketing for the type of industry we're in, and I would meet somebody from like a big organization connected to somebody like an Oprah, and that through that relationship we'd have some more opportunities. So it was really through one of Oprah's lieutenants or workers or whoever, executives, that she would have more opportunity to promote their brand. And so we talked about that. We kept fleshing it out and inviting it in and magnetizing. One day I was at home, and I got a call, and she was. It's been years now, maybe 30 years, but this was what got me really started. This is why I'm telling the story. It's part of my origin story and the type of executive coaching I like to do. And she was almost screaming on the phone, but with joy. She said, "Dave, you'll never guess what happened to me." I was like, "What happened?" She said, "You'll never guess." I said, "What? What happened? Tell me. I can't wait." And she said, "Oprah called me at the store." I said, "You're kidding. Get out of here." Oprah called me. She said, "I just had a conversation with Oprah."
Wow.
And she said one of her lieutenants at a conference who had met me, and through the process of visioning this and magnetizing it, had gone and told Oprah about their products that they had at the venue, the conference, and that Oprah liked the products and was going to feature. Oprah told her that this person had contacted her, and then she said, "So I like your products, and I'm going to feature some of them in O Magazine for the Christmas edition."
Wow.
And she said,
Wow.
it was all over from there. It was like they made money in a different way because of
Wow.
this. And I researched it and read up on it. It's called the Oprah effect. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually a name for it. When Oprah picks up
Mm.
one of your things, it changes everything. And this is such a long time ago. And I was like, wow, if we could do this in this instance, just by rehearsing it and repeating it, and what comes from taking something and rehearsing it and repeating it and seeing it become something even more powerful and more potent. So that's where a lot of the repetition comes from that we do. That's where a lot of the billionaire piece comes from. You know, if somebody picks something up and says a few words about you here or there, it can change the destiny of your brand. Anyway, so That's the new leadership development executive coaching in a miracle minded key for this time, and I'm gonna keep these and kind of pick one each time to share. So I don't know if you have any reactions. I'm not fishing for you to say anything in particular. Just if you have something that will go to you.
Yeah, that's an awesome story. That's so inspiring. And it really makes me think about what kind of miracles that I want to attract. Because normally, the way we talk about miracles, we, at least from in my mind, I think about it as a vague openness to any miracles, especially miracles that I can't even imagine, which is the types of miracles that I've attracted in the past, things that I wouldn't have necessarily written on a checklist or something. But maybe this is a good exercise to think about what is that miracle that would be life changing, because I haven't done that in a while or possibly ever. So, yeah, that would be interesting. Which connection would take me to the next level, or what event? I like to go to lots of events, yeah, like this person. So, yeah, I usually think of my miracles in terms of the output or in terms of the results, the consequences, not in terms of the method. So, but usually the method is the miracle and the consequences are the inevitable, right?
Yeah, it's enjoying the journey and the destination kind of a thing too, like what you're saying. But for instance, a quick exercise, not to do this with you, I'm not over coaching you or anything like that, but just something we can think about and see if it has more traction for us and for our audience members is what I call the prosperity or abundance ladder. And I'll do this with clients sometimes. So I'll say, okay, from wherever you are, you want to get to $1 million a year. You want to get to seven figures. That's usually a goal for a lot of people in their solo businesses or bigger business, whatever it is. And then I say, let's keep doubling that. So it can be either your personal wealth or the prosperity of your business, the revenue of your or profit of your business. Again, you want to think about whatever it is. So a million, if you double that, 2 million, 4 million, 8 million, 16 million, 32 million, 64 million, it's 128 million. Let's just make it 100 million so we can keep doubling it with these. So you double that and you just keep doubling till you're like, I'm sick of doubling it, Dave. I don't want to double it anymore. So sometimes, it depends on wherever people get. And then wherever you're satisfied with, you write it somewhere. And it's like an egg, you're just nurturing it because it's what you feel like your thresholds of abundance on a financial level are. But with each level, I ask you, what different thing would you do? So let's say you've been doubling and it's 100 million, but you've itemized what each level would do for you that the previous level wouldn't do. So you say, oh, at 100 million, oh, I buy a house for everybody in my family, and I take vacations, and I do this, and then people begin to talk about charitable or philanthropic giving. And for a lot of the doubling from there, it's building my foundation, giving scholarships, doing this, doing that. So, I mean, it's another way to concretize the inviting the miracle and who are the allies along the way, that kind of thing. The billionaire effect that you would like, or the millionaire effect you would like. I don't know if all this makes any sense, but again, not not over coaching, just describing how I tend to try to fill that uh, in terms of a client's purpose and whatnot.
Okay. And you
Yeah.
call that the millionaire ladder? Is that what you said?
Yeah,
The
the abundance or prosperity
abundance prosperity
ladder.
ladder.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Mhm.
Or the miracle ladder. Yeah. In other words, yeah, miracle ladder. So yeah, great. Thanks for mentioning that. Being transparent about that. So great. So we'll move, and we can keep patching these things in as we go along. So we're not at the lesson yet, but I'll just say what it is. And again, for those of you who are used to us and are kind of over this repetition of our miracle together, and you want to get right to the lesson and the talking points about the lesson. The lesson is about this topic. It's lesson 104, and it goes, I seek but what belongs to me. I seek but what belongs to me. So just before we get to that, quick quick overview of our origin story, me and you, Brittany. It's a chance for me to celebrate and express gratitude for the miracle process that has happened between us, and then use that to magnetize more miracles in our journey, even more amazing things that we're like. I mean, if we start like the Oprah story, I said, if for me it was a bit of grappling in the dark and not really understanding it, and then this miracle happened, then how much more with all the other things that we're doing with so much more intentionality and a well-developed miracle mindset, what could come out of all of that, if we continue to rehearse and think about different things for you individually, for me individually, for our community. So we basically got started when it was clear I needed help with my basic worksheets that I was sending out at the beginning of my assignments with different clients. And you helped me. I was really surprised. I mean, you helped beautify my worksheets. It's just amazing, and you'll see some of that uh, beautification if I end up being able to pull up the document to share. It's just wow, and it actually made me more ambitious for aesthetically pleasing documents for my business without going overboard, of course, and becoming like crazily obsessive about that. But then we went from worksheets over a period of time to me checking in with you about whether you could help me with the modules for my online course. So I had some things I had recorded on my own and just by themselves, again, not very palatable or appealing or whatever. But I mean, the content I thought was really good, and I thought highly of the content, if I do say so myself. But the they just needed something to more pizzazz, and by this point I was confident and checked with you, and could you jazz them up a bit, make them look good? And you took the whole thing and just yeah, it was like way beyond my expectations. Repurposed all that material into what became the book. Very happy about that, the book. And then once the book was out, and it just became clear in some ways that a podcast would be a good idea as the next thing. Except that I just didn't want to do it on my own. There's so many aspects of it that I didn't know about, but the main thing was the presenting. I just wanted it to be like a buddy system where we're talking informally and bouncing off of each other. It just seemed like it would be so much more fun and so much easier. And I wasn't sure if that would be something that you would be available for or would be even interested in, but your answer was affirmative, and we got going with it. And then uh, just much to my delight. And again, remotely, like in two different parts of the world, never met in person, even to this day. But at the beginning, it was like, yeah, we can do this. We'll do it on Zoom. And then you take the raw Zoom footage that we record and you beautify it, you re-edit some things about it, you have intros and outros, and then you post it into a written blog, which is something I look at after every show once you've returned those materials to me. I can't, it's like getting the newspaper or something that you want to get every day. I look at it, I'm reading it, I love it. It's just the way you do it adds something to it that is just very, very empowering. And then you put it into an audio podcast for those who might be on road trips who can't watch video or can't read things. And then we have it on, or for whom that's just a preference. And then we have the video parts too. So just a delightful set of miracles where I've been able to find more of my voice in this process. I don't use these shows really as a hard driving marketing thing. It's just really mostly for me to put it out there for people who like what we do, who like the content, who like miracle mindset, but might find it cost prohibitive to try and work one-on-one with me or something like that, because there are some steep price points to do that. But again, it's nice to be able to say, I've got the book, I've got the podcast, I've got this, I've got that. It's delightful. You can dip in as you want to and stay current with the topics that we're really fired up about. So with all of that in mind, over to you for where people can find you, more about your work, your own take on the miracle process for you, separate from me. Not, over directing you or anything. It's whatever you want to say or not say.
Thank you for that amazing testimonial. I always love hearing your side of the miracle, and I love sharing my side as well, which is that I have worked with Dave, like I said, or like he said, in these different capacities, and he's always such a joy to work with and so clear with his instructions. One funny thing that I don't know if I've mentioned it on this show or recently, but I asked you just for clarity's sake, how do you pronounce your last name? And I was expecting you to just, I don't know, type it out with a little more enunciation, but you actually recorded an audio file almost probably 8 years ago now where you're saying Asomaning in slow motion. And I was like, okay, that's how I say it,
Now,
Asomaning.
my Ghanaian friends will recoil in horror because that's not how it's said in
Oh,
Ghana.
really?
No, in Ghana,
Oh,
it's said Asmaning.
oh,
Asmaning. Yeah, that's
Asomaning.
how it's said in Ghana, but that doesn't make sense to most people in the West who see it spelled out. It's just so much easier.
So it
So,
is pretty phonetic the way that we've been
yes,
saying it
that's
here
right.
in
And
the
that's
West. So,
right too.
yeah.
It's totally acceptable. It's
Mhm.
just not in the granular cultural level yet.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I
but
haven't heard that surname anywhere else before,
great
so quite
story.
unique to
Great
me.
story.
Yeah, and so when you asked me to get on the show, the reason that it was an instant yes was not only because you're such a pleasure to work with, but because of the nature of what we'd be talking about. So I knew that this was going to be good for me to also revisit every month and think about and learn techniques from. And I get a front stage view of Dr. Dave Asamaning without having to pay that steep price point that anyone else would have to pay. So that's a benefit and a privilege as well. We talked about maybe someday we would meet in person and what that would look like, and bring my husband, whose name is also Dave, who is David.
Yes, right. Synchronicity.
Yeah. So, yeah, so many synchronicities, and the show has brought me some clients as well. So, if anyone is interested in working with me, I do various different things. I have branding as one of my specialties, or kind of like the broad umbrella of what I do. Whether that needs to be leveling up the brand of your digital products or your website, or video content, or just your logo in general, what most people might think of when they think of branding. So my website is brittanynew.com. And I also have a YouTube channel where I'm talking about some of this general stuff, but a lot about AI currently. And speaking of AI, I just wanted to I shared with you before the call that I went to this Vimeo conference, and I learned in one of the sessions that video content is going to be where AI is pulling a lot of its data from. So especially conversational style videos where people are no longer Google searching, how can I cultivate a miracle mindset, but they're going to ask ChatGPT, or they're going to ask Perplexity or Claude, and your name might come up because of how much we've been talking about this on YouTube, which is one of the sources that these language models do pull from to get information about what's going on in the world. So, yeah, it's a very, very forward thinking thing to do. There's different discussions on whether or not podcasts will be included in those knowledge bases. Currently, Spotify is not, but YouTube is, as well as any blog post or website that's out there. And of course, the higher the ranking of the website, the more likely the AI will pick it up. So, yeah, that's a little tech side for
Love it. I
for
get
thought.
those. I get those from you on the
Yeah.
regular. It's like the AI videos and different things. It's just all great. I love it. I love it. You're
Yeah,
really
so
into it. You're
mhm.
good at it. So
Clarity and repetition is what they say is going to be the key to showing up and ranking in the AI search engines.
is that
Not
it?
necessarily how many views the video gets, but how fresh and consistent the messaging is that we're putting out. So
Is
that's
that
really
right?
cool. Hmm.
Okay, so we're there in a lot of
Yeah,
ways. I think.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, and while you were speaking too, I was reflecting, and just one more thing before we get to the lesson.
Hmm.
Um, I mentioned that one of the things I was looking for intuitively was somebody who could be an ally, a good dialogue
Hmm.
partner. And you've
Hmm.
certainly been that with an area that uh, maybe wasn't that familiar to you. I don't know how familiar you were with the Course in Miracles. It wasn't a basis for us working together,
Hmm.
but it was the style of asking questions, keeping it as a dialogue back and forth, so that I had the audience in mind, so that they wouldn't just get bored with old Dave, talking and talking and droning on, but Dave, then Brittany, Brittany, then Dave, and a topic that can sometimes be a bit mystifying and complicated. I feel like you've helped to mediate it to our
Hmm.
audience with a fresh an interesting take, that a lot of our audience might come to it with, But you've just been phenomenal as a dialogue
Oh,
partner. So, yeah, it's been great. I haven't mentioned that nearly enough, I don't think so. Well,
thank you.
anything else you want to say? You don't have to be saying anything if you don't want to, but then we'll get to the lesson. Just
No, just thank you. Thanks for saying
You
that.
are very welcome, very welcome. Thank you for everything you've put into this. That's one of the reasons the blog post is so amazing because I mean you really do go above and beyond the Call of Duty in that. To me, when I look at it, I'm like, then I get informed by what we just did together, but it looks so different. And it's not like you've distorted it in any way. You've just taken what we did and made it vibrant and interesting. So thank you for that. Looking forward to this month after we've done all of this work here today. So to the lesson 104, and I seek but what belongs to me in truth. Each of these lessons in the Course in Miracles has a headline affirmation to it. And then after we do the lesson itself, which I try to make as simple and as clear as possible, although it's from Dave's understanding, which is partial. You should always read it yourself and explore it yourself. Hopefully with my stuff helping to as an on-ramp. Well, after that, then we do a section called From the Headlines. So we're applying miracle principles to the things we see in the headlines. Again, it's not to be controversial or overly sort of debating any of that stuff. And then Brittany usually bring us to conclusion with a call to action of some kind from the whole thing. And you're very good at all those things. So here we go with the lesson for today. I think that the lesson basically breaks down into kind of two main aspects, right? So one of the aspects is that as people, we are entitled to joy and peace, right? So we're in this theme of peace going forward now for 2026, but starting in November and December. So we are entitled to joy and peace. It makes this point over and over again, which is why I chose it, because of its emphasis on our entitlement to joy and peace. But it says that we have to make a place within our psyches where we receive the gifts of God that give us joy and peace, including those gifts of joy and peace themselves. So then it says to make a place for these gifts from God, we must remove the gifts we have made for ourselves, or in other words, our self-made gifts. Now, that's an interesting dialectic or an interesting juxtaposition. So when I was thinking about this and preparing and reading, and I was like, so how do you tell the difference? Right? How do you tell the difference between the two types of gifts? The gifts that we give ourselves, and then the gifts that God gives us. So clearly one type of gift is a good, useful, meaningful gift. And then the other type of gift is a problematic type of gift, right? And I was like, wow, okay, how can we really clarify what this is, right? And so again, for those of you who have been with us for a while, and Brittany, thank you for, by the way, for helping me tee the sharing of this diagram up. But you see that this is kind of your handiwork when I talk about beautifying things, right? The border up there where the logo is, the, some of the stuff down further below, and then a graphic designer actually designed this schematic based on my description. But it's just such an amazing integration of different skill sets from you and other people. And before it just wouldn't have popped like this, But in any case, so this schematic that I created is, I always like to say somewhat jokingly, this is like 30 years worth of work, So yeah, it's color coded. The red is kind of the ego, which is in the Course in Miracles problematic, malicious. I always distinguish that because in Freud and Jung, it's not problematic and quite, it's not malicious. The malicious side is given to other things. But then you have this blue section, which is stuff that we've accumulated individually and collectively, like trauma, and you could summarize it as fear, guilt, and anger, World War I, World War II, slavery, every accident, every death, every murder, every natural disaster that's ever happened is somewhere in a collective record. Some people call it the Akashic record. Jung called it the unconscious, collective unconscious, and so on. But anyway, this is all pressing on each of us individually, like a kind of pre-internet internet, right? Where, according to A Course in Miracles, that's where our lived experience comes from. We're all living a movie that is the result of the negative thoughts that are in the subconscious mind. So that's represented by these arrows going to the right. That's the movie that everybody creates. And so this whole thing here, this triangle of red and blue things, is really the gifts we give to ourselves. Right? It's the stuff that usually for most of us, and especially for very driven, high achievement oriented leaders, it's usually about in the environment here. How can I manipulate the environment in some way that I can make more money, influence more people, even do more good? But you'll notice that for the most part, there's very little connection to the green, which is where the gifts from the divine come from, right? Which is like everything that we could ever want or need or desire for each of us has already been produced for us in the green. It's already there. We don't have to hustle. We don't have to sweat. We don't have to struggle. So part of the way we tell the difference, I think, this is what launched me into this schematic here, is if there's an undue amount of struggle and pain and suffering and dysfunction in how we're going about achieving it, then there's a part of the divine that's being left out. And we're attempting, I was joking with you before, I like doing this a lot. It's some kind of new way of saying things, but it's us saying to God, hold my beer, I got this. Basically, I can do better than you. I know how to do this. And then it just unravels and it leads to trouble, you know? So, all right, so that's the lesson. And there's a little bit of practice, and then I'm going to turn it over to you, Brittany. Just a little bit of practice that I'll highlight here. It says, therefore, in choosing what God has made for us, the gifts that God has made for us in place of what we made, we but unite our will with what God wills and recognize the same as being one. Our longer practice periods today, the hourly 5 minutes given truth for your salvation should begin with this. I seek but what belongs to me in truth, and joy and peace are my inheritance. Then lay aside the conflicts of the world, which is a tip-off to all the stuff that's in the movie on the outside, right? Lay aside the conflicts of the world that offer other gifts and other goals made of illusions, witnessed to by them and sought for only in a world of dreams or nightmares, right? So that's as far as we'll go with the lesson. Any thoughts, any reactions, any questions?
That was an excellent breakdown of the lesson today. You made it very clear, especially when you mentioned what types of gifts are those kind of false gifts that we give to ourselves. Like I could think of so many, like status and physical status symbols and things like that. So the list could go on and on of all those false gifts. But returning to a place of really just seeking peace and joy as kind of not, those are types of things that we often think of as rewards for hard work in our lives. And those should be like our base level, like our birthright, rather than a reward for doing well with our work. We can experience joy on our annual vacation, or peace when we finally check off our entire to-do list, for example. So yeah, I think that this call to action is I'll get back to it once we're wrapping everything up, but I think it's a great lesson.
Thank you. Great, clear, that you get what we're talking about here. Not that I thought you wouldn't, but the way you reflected it back is equally clear, which is what you do in the blog. You make things even more clear, which is why I like reading them. But yeah, so again, with high achieving clients who are aiming for lots of money and lots of influence and lots of the things in the world, it's a big question that keeps coming up is, if I'm going to be a person of faith and see God's gifts, is it wrong for me to be ambitious for those things? And no, it's not. It's just what comes first. To your point, Are we seeking those things so we can feel good? Or do we feel good and confident and secure in God's love and protection and gifts to us, which enables us to do things without the stress and the hustle? So, for a lot of professional people, what it amounts, including me, when I had heart problems in 2014, it's like, you got to work. If it's not killing you, then it's not worth anything. It doesn't have any value. If it doesn't almost kill you, and it's like a real elaborate theology of the cross, which is you have to get up. Sometimes comedians and people, for somebody who's giving them too much drama and complaining too much, like, look, get off of the cross. We need the wood. Let's make that joke. It's the funniest thing when people do that. But this is for real. I mean, I ruined my life in some ways pursuing the Ph.D. by over exerting myself in all the wrong ways, doing it in my own effort, my own strength, my own intellect. Even though it was about God and it was about miracles, I didn't know what we're talking about today the way I know it now. And so my life just was out of balance, and I got sick from that, among other things, and had these heart problems. And I talk to all kinds of professionals who say the same thing. They're repeating just tragedies of imbalance. Their kids going to college are repeating tragedies of imbalance because everybody thinks that if you don't work your butt off and almost kill yourself, what you're doing isn't worth it. So this is a way in which I try to legitimize. You can still pursue big goals, the abundance ladder we talked about, into the billions of dollars, whatever. But, there's an easier way to do it. So thank you for your thoughts and everything you shared. All right, so headlines. I'll just tell you my headlines, and I'd love to hear any headlines you want to share. So, the government shutdown continues, although it looks like they're getting closer to some kind of resolution. So that's been an interesting thing. That leads into talk about SNAP, which is the entitlements program or the benefits program, and it was just horrifying that families were going to go hungry because they were down to their last $200, last $100, and the accusations that got flung left and right across political line, all these different things. But it was beginning to get kind of borderline heartbreaking. Like, okay, we're talking about things for which there is money, but because of the shutdown and the political stuff around it, people might be going hungry. I don't know. That was a weird sort of. Okay, so Mandani wins the election, and that's like a shot in the arm for if you're on one side, and it's the worst diabolical thing that could ever have happened if you're on the other side of the political equation, because he's a Muslim and he's a terrorist and he's a Marxist and a communist and he's going to destroy New York. I mean, it's like the most interesting thing, but okay. Dick Cheney, former vice president, passed away. We had Hurricane Melissa in Jamaica, which was devastating. And then the last thing from entertainment, we try to include something from entertainment, is Sydney Sweeney is taking a lot of incoming the last couple of weeks about her jeans ad from before. And so anyway, these are just some of the headlines. That there's so much more, but again, we're not trying to be exhaustive or comprehensive. It's just a couple of headlines, So, and over to you for any ones you want to highlight or any reactions to the ones I shared after yours. Yeah.
Yeah, when we were going to New York, my husband and I just went on a trip to New York, and our one of our flights was delayed because of the government shutdown, and that's what the pilot actually came out and said. He was like, "This is a direct consequence of the government shutdown. There are not enough air traffic control people working in New York, and they're simply not answering the phone."
Really?
So we had to wait on the tarmac for a few hours, and then they took us off the plane. We ended up getting there not too late, but there was a few moments where we weren't sure if we were going to get there at all that day, because they simply weren't. They grounded all planes into New York, and they
Really?
weren't doing anything about it for a time being. But fortunately, there was it was actually a miracle that we ended up going, because then they did an inspection on our plane and they found an issue, which is why they took us off the plane. When they had the green light to actually go again, there was an issue with the plane, took us off, fixed the issue, put us back on, and then because we were a fixed issue flight instead of a regular flight. We had priority to go
Oh,
in. So that was some kind of miracle. Of course, we're in the sky. Like, is the issue fixed though? But it was apparently fixed. So
wow, Brittany, what an
yeah,
amazing story. Real time effects
yeah,
from the shutdown. I had no
yeah,
idea. It's really like, there you have it, folks, right from
yeah.
one of our
He
own.
said it
Who's,
like that. Yeah, he
yeah,
said it like a little finger pointing. And he was so humble about it. He was very like I want to get there too, guys. Trust me. He was very frustrated. He was the most frustrated. We were all
wow,
giving him words of encouragement, this poor pilot.
really?
Yeah, I was like, "You're doing great. Thank you." And it was just constant updates and yeah, it was interesting. Um and of course, we got a grand total of $15 meal vouchers per person for our
For all your
hours
trouble, yeah,
invested. Yeah.
exactly. It's like, and imagine that multiplied through the skies and the different airports, and
Yeah, yeah.
it's just like a
It got worse
nightmare.
after that. Like what we had was one thing, and then we were reading headlines after we got back home and how things got a lot worse.
Right, and some people don't
Yeah.
even really want to fly. Wow. Thank you for that story. Right from fresh from the field, so to speak, because that's like just a nightmare. And a lot of people are like, yeah, I don't. Yeah, you said your dad was trying to convince you not to travel, right? By not to fly.
Also because of being pregnant, but I was like, what are the odds I'm going to give birth on my 7-hour flight? And not to mention, I'm way too early, but I think just a concerned dad
Yeah, no, that's nice. That
told me to stay home and rest.
wow, I love the humanity of the whole thing. Just a quick vignette you drew, the pilot, the you encouraging you passengers encouraging him. It's like
Hmm.
the potential fearful thoughts that could enter. Are
Hmm.
we safe? Are we really good to go? Or
Hmm.
just because of all of this, political stuff. Like,
Hmm.
anyway, very profound. Thank you for that. Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
And then, in regards to another headline with the SNAP benefits, it kind of can be related to this lesson directly in the sense that people see food, of course, as a human right, not something that should be earned. Although I feel complicated about that because the rest of us have to earn it. But first, but in general, the theory is if you're not able to earn it, it should still be something that's provided to you when in need. So I do agree with that for sure. I wish that it was just a given that we could just go to our local trees and pluck off whatever our heart's desires to eat, but agriculture has taken that privilege away from us.
Right.
um,
Yeah. I mean, you raise a huge, big, important point, which might come
mhm,
up in future calls, when we have the time around, all the things we're entitled to. So, for instance, not to make a whole big thing of this, I want to give you
mhm,
back the mic too, in case you have more. But sometimes somebody like Bill Gates will say, "Oh, AI is going to like do all the work, all the labor,
mhm,
and 20, 30 years, maybe even 10 years from now, we'll just have the time to do what we want to do, because all these other things will be provided for us by AI labor, and we'll have leisure and riches and
mm,
abundance and well-being." It's a little bit like this spiritual, we're entitled to just exist lavishly and well just because God created us, not because we work hard to get things, whatever it is. And anyway, back to you.
I think that would be such an idyllic outcome of the advances in technology, but I'm a little bit cynical about it because even things like universal basic income, I was having a conversation recently with people about this and asking if they would like, to have no job where they must work in order to have their livelihood covered, but then they could obviously do whatever the vocation they want to do with their time. But I was just going through it in my head, doing a mini simulation and thinking if, let's say, they would have to just abolish everything, because if landlords knew that everybody was getting an extra 5K a month, then they would just raise the rent 5K. That's what I imagine would happen because they know everyone has it. So that seems to be the way that things function and the way that inflation works. And I don't really see it actually happening. And we're going to have to wait for the afterlife for these kind of benefits, is what I'm thinking.
No, I hear you. I hear you. Again, it's fun. And again, maybe from time to time we'll have ongoing back and forth debates. I mean,
Hmm.
so let me ask you this, not in the spirit
Hmm.
of debate and just firing back or anything. I don't
Hmm.
really like that type of debating anymore. I used to, but so let me ask you this in a friendly debating kind of way.
Hmm.
Would governments be able to cap what landlords could charge, for instance? Like, in other words, that it's not a communist society, it's not a socialist society per se, and all those labels, but and governments say, yeah, you can make your money in different ways, but there's going to be a ceiling per unit of a certain size of how much you can charge, or else you'll face penalties and fines and different things. I don't know. That's what popped into my mind.
Yeah, that seems like a solution. Um, but they would this is why I've become less political lately, because I really got to the crux of different issues, and I thought if I was in charge, I would do everything. I would turn it all upside down so much that none of these debates would even be debates anymore, because we'd be debating different things if I were in charge. So I think that idea sounds perfectly good and logical, but then I was talking to my uncle in New York about his rent controlled apartment and how he's lived in it for 30 years in his rent controlled apartment. And so what's interesting about that is he is entitled to rent control whether he lives there or somewhere else. But if he were to move, the rent control would reset based on current market values. So, in order my answer to your question is, in order for rent control to work, then house prices would also have to remain, which would eliminate a lot of people's incentive to buy property because property rates always go up so much. So that would just kind of destroy the entire real estate market as we know it, but it would make livelihood better for more people. And I'm probably for that, just to answer that question. But I don't know what it would take to reset the real estate industry. And yeah, a lot of people wouldn't continue to have their wealth if that were the case.
Yeah, yeah, great response. I love it. It seems like a lot of the Nordic countries have some elements of what we're talking about,
Hmm. Hmm.
where there's vast nets of things to improve people's quality of life. It's like per hospital visit, you're capped at $10, for instance.
Hmm.
Something I heard about one of the
Hmm.
countries, Norway or Sweden or someplace. And
Hmm.
I mean, it just percolates through the whole society, in different
Hmm.
ways. And they don't feel like they're communist or socialist countries per se, but they do have these constraints on how people can be gouged or
Hmm.
brutalized
Hmm.
by life. So I don't know. It's like, okay, you heard it here first. Brittany for president. Okay, she's going to turn everything upside down.
No.
Just
Yeah, I used to date someone from Denmark, and so I learned a lot about what they do in Scandinavia, and what I will say is it's a beautiful thing, especially in Europe. You can choose which European country you want to live in. So if you like high government regulation, high job security, relatively high cost of living and high taxes, but also decent wages, then that's a good place for you. But I think the second somebody wants to become a millionaire, they move out because of the taxes. So I think it attracts a certain type of person or a certain type of entrepreneur, social capitalist type of person. But a lot of people end up moving to countries like Dubai when they want to
I
pursue
see.
what we would consider wealth because it doesn't
There's a
incentivize that.
cap on, yeah,
Hmm.
what you can really do freely. Yeah, I got you.
Yeah.
Okay,
Hmm.
very helpful. Thank you for sharing that part of your experience with us. Yeah.
And I wish the states had more variety like that. It still feels like a lot of the states operate, even though we do have more socialist type states and less, it does all still feel like not that, not like Scandinavia.
Right.
Hmm.
And I'm not partisan about this, but maybe this is what Mandami offers in a way,
Yeah, that's
Like,
what I believe he's going for.
okay, what you just described about Denmark,
Well, when
was
I
it?
think of yeah, when I think of a socialist capitalist, that's what I think of, and it does work there in a lot of ways, but New York, however, is a place where people go to pursue mega
Correct.
wealth.
Very
So
big. That's why
it's
the people
going
are
to be a
saying they're going to leave.
conflict.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're like, I get it now. I didn't used to get it, but based on what you just used from your experience, I get it more clearly
It's
now.
not right or wrong, it's
Yeah.
just preference.
Yeah, yeah, and it's wow. Okay, well, very interesting. So thank you for that. Anything else you want to address before we finish out for today with your call to action?
I had a little metaphor that I was thinking in regards to the lesson, so I'll just go with that into the call to action. So, in the sense of we were talking about having to earn joy or having to earn peace, you could think of it as insane as holding your breath until you finish a task, because we don't think about breath in terms of one of those entitled things, even though obviously it is, but we would never withhold ourselves from something like breathing to achieve a certain goal or to earn it or something. That's just one thing that I can think of that we would never do. We would die pretty quickly if we did that. So to put peace and joy in those in the same category as breathing and just accepting that that is a state that we belong in constantly, not something that needs to be earned, I think could be really helpful in separating these different types of gifts that are from God. And the breath in our lungs is certainly a gift from God too.
That's helping me
Yeah.
right now. I'm wanting to take deeper breaths and not hold my
Yeah.
breath. Like I'm like, okay, yes,
Yeah, the
that's
beating of
great.
our heart, things
Good one.
that, we
Good
don't
one.
have to think about. But I wish we could all live in that kind of peace and joy and have it be irrevocable. So, yeah, I think that's the goal here. And then the practice, as it says here in the course, it says to give 5 minutes per hour. That's kind of a system that the course recommends often for its different practices. So 5 minutes out of each hour. You can begin by saying, I seek what belongs to me in truth, and joy and peace are my inheritance. I seek what belongs to me in truth, and joy and peace are my inheritance. And then lay aside the conflicts of the world that offer these gifts and other goals that are made of illusions witnessed by them and sought out for only in a world of dreams. So, yeah, it just says to lay aside those conflicts that are the ones that are introducing the gifts that are the false gifts, the gifts that are related to the malicious ego, the status, the shallow things that might have nothing to do with true joy and true peace. So that's the practice and the call to action for today, and I think it's a great one.
Beautiful. I love how you did that. Thank you. You just went back to the lesson and the
Mm-hmm.
guided practice there. Excellent,
Mm-hmm.
excellent, excellent. So, well, wonderful. Okay, so we're at the end of our call today. Another just wonderful, exhilarating experience with you, Brittany. Thank you for all the riches you brought to it. Just so abundant in so many different ways. So I really appreciate it. And blessings to you and your husband and your baby. Uh, uh, and also to our audience, to everyone who listens to this, blessings and more power to you in everything you're trying to do, more miracles to you in everything you're doing, and more breath, deep breath to you in everything you're doing, thanks to Brittany. Suggestion.
Yes, thank you. And I'm really looking forward to this year of peace. I think it's a perfect theme and definitely something I want to focus on and cultivate. So, everyone, let's commit to cultivating a year of peace for 2026. And thanks, Dave, for your insight on this lesson. And I'll see you next time.
Looking forward to it.